Welcome to Nurture Small Business, Creating a Thriving Space, with your host, Denise Kagan. Denise is the president of DCA Virtual Business Support and has been a business owner for almost 20 years. DCA Virtual Business Support provides small businesses with an expert pairing of virtual administrative and marketing assistance to match your needs. Learn more at dcavirtual.com.
Vince Scott is the founder of Defense Cybersecurity Group, where he helps organizations prepare for all aspects of cybersecurity compliance assessments, and is chief officer for the STITEC, where he has been putting his security approach into practice. He's a retired United States Navy cryptologist who has held roles as a director in Oklahoma State University Multispectral Laboratory, led Procter & Gamble's Global Incident Response Organization, and led PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, Vince, thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to the Nurture Small Business podcast.
So tell me a little bit about what you've done for some of those. Those are big names: Procter & Gamble, PricewaterhouseCoopers. I mean, Oklahoma State University. Tell me what you've done for some of those businesses.
Yeah, sure. So Oklahoma State was right after I retired. I actually went to work for the Multispectral Laboratory, primarily as a division director, trying to bridge university technology back to the Department of Defense and say, hey, we've got this technology at Oklahoma State. I think it applies to, current Department of Defense problems. How do we put these two things together and make that happen? Along the way there, I also became their chief information officer for the multispectral lab and ran their data center and did some other stuff. Literally, my boss walked by me and said, hey, Vince, you know about this IT stuff? Now you get to run it. Oh, thanks. Appreciate that. Does this come with a pay raise? No, of course not.
Not at that time, right?
not at that time, right? So I left there. I went to Procter & Gamble, and really that was what I describe as, how do we know when we've been hacked and what do we do about it, right? And that's also a place where I heard a lot of, hey, we're a soap and diaper company. Who would hack us? And my response to that was, well, everybody who wants a slice of your $85 billion gross every year, might be interested. So that was really a fascinating role for me, because I got to see really what was going on in the hacking community globally. Procter & Gamble's in 125 countries. They've got something like 80 plus manufacturing plants. So just a really broad, diverse footprint for the company, which led us to looking at all different kinds of things in that period of time that I worked there. And then Pricewaterhouse, I was a director in their privacy and cybersecurity practice, and I ran their threat intelligence program. That was something else I ran at Procter & Gamble as a former intelligence sort of guy. That kind of comes naturally to me, but I really think cyber intelligence in some ways is a little bit different. The biggest challenge in cyber intelligence is actually having something to plug it into to be operational, so that in the military, we don't have that problem. There's this huge operations thing, but that consumes intelligence. In cyber, that's not really the way businesses are set up. So it can be, you can have some really good information and not be, in my term, be able to operationalize it and make it relevant for the business. That can be a challenge sometimes.
I think small business owners have that challenge in general. I mean, a lot of times financial data comes in, it's like, oh, this is great information. How do I use it? So it sounds like cybersecurity and cyber intelligence works very largely the same way.
Yeah, and I think it's really that's a larger company issue, not so much for small business, because from a small business perspective, hey, whatever you get, you want to have automated, right? Hey, I don't expect small businesses to be making nuanced consumption of this highly technical hacker stuff that comes across and go, ooh, they're doing this new thing. Print Nightmare came out in the last 7 days, which is a hack against Microsoft printer service. No small business is really going to dig into what the heck is Print Nightmare and what do I need to do differently, right? You need that to be automated for you. But at the larger business scale, it's really a problem. And interesting to hear that matches how do you consume data as a challenge for small business across the board.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So I'm really glad that you're talking about this. How do you keep abreast of the trends? I mean, I know you said you're well read. Are you constantly reading like technical bulletins and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of things I do. I read or listened to a podcast for a guy who talked about streams of information and how you harness the internet and you get the streams of information that are out there to feed you what you need and what's relevant to you in smart ways. And philosophically, I think that's a really cool concept to think about. Okay, what sort of things what spam do I sign up for and what comes into my inbox and what do I actually read every day? So I have a couple of things that I read every day for cyber. The biggest one is a publication that you can sign up for free called the Cyberwire. And they do a great job of summarizing all the news. And I read the executive summary. They do an executive summary and then a detailed piece.
Oh,
I read the
nice.
executive summary of that every day. And they haven't let me down yet, and I haven't been surprised. They're pretty much on top of what's breaking news in the cyber industry from my perspective. I also look at Krebs on security. If you're not a security person, you may have never heard of him. He's
No.
I think he was a New York Times reporter who got into cyber and cyber hacking and cyber criminal organizations and then went solo. And so he follows cyber crime very closely and who's being arrested in the Russian underground and stuff like that. So sometimes he'll come out with breaking news that he breaks things that nobody else has heard about yet. So I also watch his stuff as it comes out across the wire. And I think those are probably my two biggest sort of daily things. And then of course there's this constant studying that's going on in the cyber world because I have a friend of mine who's talking about becoming, moving into the cyberspace, and he really hasn't been doing that. And he was like, Vince, we went to college together, so he's a peer of mine, and he was looking for new challenges and new ways. I was like, oh, how do I get into this new thing? And I'm like, well, part of it is that having 20 years of experience doesn't necessarily help you, because cyber reinvents itself every 5 years, and that it really does. I mean, it changes, the methods change, the things that you're doing change, the way IT architecture is set up changes. And so you can rapidly move into the field, I think, by learning about what's current in today, because it does change so rapidly. And people who get into the space and think they know it because they learned something 10 years ago, and I do run across those people, and they're kind of still in this, particularly in government, who are still in that same sort of way, right? We learned this 10 years ago, and we no, actually that's 10 years ago. That's like prehistoric from a cyber perspective, right? That's not the way this works anymore.
Well, yeah, because it has to keep up with technology, and technology evolves very quickly. And in the pandemic from the last year and a half, it was incredibly fast evolving.
Yes, right. It changes so quickly. I had, gosh, I think it was General Minahan who was my director at the National Security Agency back in the day, and he used to talk about web years, and a web year was 3 months. Trying to train the parts of the world's largest bureaucracy, right? That, hey, no, this stuff is happening quickly. It's changing very quickly, and the nature of what we're doing is changing very quickly. If you're not running, you're not keeping up.
That's incredible. So you've mentioned some very large names, businesses that you work with, but you also work with small business owners now that you own your own business.
Absolutely. I am a small business, and I love to help small and medium-sized businesses. So this is sort of my fourth entrepreneurial effort. My first one was a fail. Actually, between Oklahoma State and Procter & Gamble, I tried to make a go of it, and it didn't really go. And so I tried big corporate. And then I've actually started two not-for-profits,
Nice.
one of which is a success and one of which was a fail. And so this is my second company, my fourth entrepreneurial venture, in my view. I'm learning every time. I'm getting a little bit better at what I do, and I certainly commiserate with, and I think I'm trying to learn and understand the challenges that are faced by small businesses in particular how they deal with that in cyber. And of course, for me, I'm very focused right now on small and medium-sized businesses that do work for the Department of Defense. That's a
Okay.
highly regulated industry.
Mhm.
There's already a lot of bureaucracy and requirements laid on defense contractors that are particularly burdensome if you're small, right?
Yep.
I think we see this across the board in government regulation. I watched a quality of food series the other day. Now, a couple months ago, my wife put me onto it, and in there, the small farmers were complaining and really saying, hey, there's all this bureaucracy about me. If I want to, grow a little bit of food and have some chickens and have some milk and, deliver that to people, et cetera, as maybe this country did a lot of 100 years ago, the regulation is such now that I almost can't do that because these big companies can hire 5 people to just keep track of the bureaucracy. I can't as a small farmer. I'm a farmer. I don't have time to have 5 people, nor can I pay them to do that. And so as you get these big regulations, scaling them down to small business, oftentimes they don't scale down. They scale down to a point, but then after that, it doesn't scale down anymore. And that's a real challenge for businesses, I think, working with the Department of Defense. And now cyber is going to be a new set of regulations and requirements that don't necessarily scale down well.
Yeah. So I went through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, and in that program, in my cohort, there were a lot of small businesses that dealt with the government, and some specifically the Department of Defense. And I work with some veterans organizations who also are in that space where, first nonprofits, and they don't really understand the security needed for IT, cybersecurity, et cetera, and then just kind of distilling out what all those requirements are for Department of Defense. How do you go about working with those clients?
Yeah, so I'm very focused on the cyber piece of it as opposed to the contracting finance, and there are many rules, right?
Yes.
And as my 4-year-old once told me, Daddy, there's a lot of rules and I don't know them all yet. And I still think that's what truer words were never spoken.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, he was literally 4 and he turned around to me and he was like, Daddy, it was very serious. There's a lot of rules and I don't know them all yet.
That is adorable.
Son, I still feel the same way. It's okay.
Yeah, I get it. Some days it's like that.
Some days it's like that. Yeah. Anyway, so from a cyber perspective, really there's 2 standards out there today. There's the standard that's current that most DoD contractors are supposed to be following right now. And really the mass majority of them are not. And some of them aren't even aware of it. There's been no accountability for that standard whatsoever. And then we have the future standard that is in the process of rolling out, that is everything in the first standard plus another 20%, and comes with accountability. There's going to be independent third-party inspections, assessments, audits, pick your word, every 3 years for every company that's anywhere in the defense industrial base supply chain, and that includes tiered subcontractors. So if you're a 4th tier subcontractor who sells food at the cafeteria in some DoD facility and really have never had to deal with the DoD side of the bureaucracy because those companies upchain from you handle that, principally the prime contractor, cyber now is going to reach all the way down. And they're going to require you, the prime is going to have to say, okay, subs, you all have to show me your certificate that you've been assessed and found to be good from a cyber perspective. And then that's supposed to flow all the way down into the supply chain. So potentially you could have small businesses that have never really thought of themselves as DoD contractors who find themselves asked, hey, show me your cyber certificate that says you're good to go. And they go, what cyber certificate are you talking about? And what the heck is this? I foresee many crises for small business based around that.
What are some of the things that get assessed? I mean, in the standard today?
Yeah. Well, and the standard today is 80% of the standard tomorrow too. So really, there's 110 controls, and there are 110 things that you're supposed to do around this cybersecurity standard for the Department of Defense. And really, that standard is based on a presumption that you have what the DoD calls, or the federal government calls, controlled and classified information. Now, and that's anything that law, regulation, or policy requires to be secured in some fashion. Well, but the problem is that covers a whole lot of ground. There's like 125 categories of CUI. And it oftentimes, even the federal government representatives don't know what
COI?
it is. CUI, no, right. So controlled and classified information is CUI, right? That's that anything that law, regulation, or government-wide policy requires protection for.
Okay.
So those are things like PII, medical information, defense technical information is a big one, right? So even things like, and I recently worked with a gentleman who testified before Congress on this, who has a company that delivers fuel to the Department of Defense. In commercial off-the-shelf COTS is exempt from this requirement, right? Because it's commercial off-the-shelf. It's not special for the DoD. But as a part of his contract, he knows where the ships, airplanes, submarines, et cetera, are, when they're there, et cetera. And so the DoD has said, hey, no, that's controlled and classified information. So even though he's delivering a COTS product, he's still dealing with CUI, and he's still been told to be compliant, right? So it's pretty broad.
Okay.
Anyway, 110 requirements. And those 110 requirements cover things like you have to have antivirus, right?
Okay.
You have to know what all your stuff is. So have a good inventory of what your things are, so you know if it's got antivirus or not. You have to, but then we get into harder things, right? Two-factor authentication is a requirement. You have to understand all the places you interact with cloud service providers and how those work, and are those cloud service providers appropriately certified to handle the DoD's information?
Wow.
Yeah, and then you start getting into things which I call the programs. A configuration management program, a mechanism by which you control the configuration of your computers, a risk management program. You've got to take admin rights away from everybody. There's just, it becomes, if you're Procter & Gamble, you already have programs for this stuff, and you may need to tweak them or tighten them up or whatever in order to meet the DoD's requirements. But if you're a small business, you don't have a configuration management program. You buy laptops from Best Buy and then make sure that it has software on it. And if you're good, you've downloaded some antivirus because you know hacking is a thing and you want to have it on there, but you don't really have a configuration management program, right? So if you're a one-person, two-person, three-person shop, a lot of this stuff does not scale down well. And so the challenge then becomes, how do I meet the compliance requirements in my micro business or my small business or my medium-sized business where I don't have all of these things? And I think really the solutions are unique to your business, and it depends on what you've got going on. Is that I'm working with controlled and classified information all the time. I'm doing research and development around nuclear secrets. No, man, I really need to be locked down, and I've got, how do I handle that?
Right.
I'm mom and pop's flower shop off base. I've actually run into this one in Dayton, right? So your mom and pop's flower shop was told they had to be compliant because they're delivering flowers to things, and we're like, why? They're not handling any of the sensitive information. No, because we said. So you do have those instances where, and maybe their approach to that might be very different, and come up with some, so I really know that we're not dealing with controlled and classified information. So we come up with some policies that really limit the scope of that to maybe a single laptop, and do some things to check the compliance block and isolate that and not impact their business and not make it, a huge overblown thing that they have to do. I think there are approaches, but it just depends on what your business is, how much involved with the DoD is, what percentage of your business is it, those sorts of things. So normally what I do is I want to go in and conduct what I call a gap assessment, which is really look at your business and say, so tell me what you're doing, right? How many contracts do you have? What do those require, et cetera. Then let's do a gap assessment that says, here's the 110 controls. Tell me what you're doing. Number one, not doing that. Number two, yes, doing that. And then out of that gap assessment, then you come up with a plan of action to say, how am I going to address the shortfalls that are going to get me to compliance based on my business and my operational need, and what I'm going to have to do with the DoD or my prime contractors, and my budget, what I can afford, what the scope of my business is, and then what the standard requires, right? So we have to put all of three of those things together to come up with a plan that meets the requirements for your business, doesn't break the piggy bank, and moves you towards compliance.
And is there ever a business that's just too small?
There's never a business that's too small. There are businesses that can make the case that they don't have controlled and classified information at all. Sometimes that case is hard to make because my experience with the government contracting officers and bureaucracy is that they're not that nuanced. They want to throw that requirement on there in case someday we wanted to share controlled and classified information with you. So show me your stuff. Well,
Gotcha.
Show me what CUI I'm going to have, because I don't think I'm going to have any. No, show me, it's a be prepared to order or as executing order difference. And you get into this catch-22 of, show me the CUI. No, you show me the CUI. In general, small contractors especially lose those arguments in my experience.
Gotcha.
There are very strong voices in the community who are absolutely correct. You should fight the good fight. Yeah, but if I'm Raytheon, that looks a whole lot different, right? I roll out my team of lawyers to go work with the Pentagon folks to fix these problems. If I'm mom and pop's flower shop, I don't have a team of lawyers, and so fighting the good fight is, there's a risk reward thing. There is, do I want to keep doing DoD business? Do I want to fight the good fight? Do I want to say, okay, I'm just going to be compliant, and how can I be compliant as painlessly as possible to meet the requirement and keep doing my DoD business? I mean, there's multiple questions there that only the business leadership can decide on.
And that makes sense. So we briefly spoke about cybersecurity insurances in our pre-conversation. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's a topic that I'm not very familiar with. I've only heard it once or twice before. So I suspect there's a lot of businesses out there that are also not very familiar with it.
Right. So cybersecurity insurance is absolutely growing. The advice I would have for all businesses, but especially small and medium-sized businesses, is make sure you understand the circumstances under which they will pay. So because the cybersecurity market is so new and there's just so many challenges in it, if you get hacked and get ransomware and that destroys your business or you have to pay, will your insurance actually cover that? And what I've seen in the industry is a lot of insurance policies are written so that they almost never pay. And that's the insurance company's game, right? But if your house burns down with the fire insurance, everybody has fire insurance on your building. You got to have it. You have it. And if the building burns down, they are going to pay. Right. Unless you burn it down yourself and they can prove it's arson. But in general, lightning strikes, building burns down, you're going to get paid. From a cyber perspective, I don't think that is as certain. So you should look at those insurance carriers. Do some research. Under what circumstances have you guys paid in the past? Do some open source research and say, hey, have I got any news articles that show this company has paid, the cyber insurance claim here or whatever? Sometimes that information can be hard to get, but I would definitely be asking hard questions about that, because what I hate to see is a small business paying for what they think is hacking insurance that's going to cover them. Then they get hacked, and the insurance company was, well, they didn't hack that the way that we said they needed to hack it. So no. Wait a minute. I thought I was buying hacking insurance. Well, hacking is hacking. What? And so that's a challenge, and that's something that I just think companies really need to be aware of.
Yeah. I worked
go ahead.
with an engineering firm that they were using a voice over IP phone system that got hacked with $30,000 worth of overseas calls.
Yep.
And it got hacked more than once. It got fixed once and then hacked again. It eventually went to a lawsuit. And I was kind of taken out of the process of communication at that point because it was way above what the things that I do.
Well,
but when it covers something like that.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
You can get insurance for that. I've actually, the 1-900 number in Nigeria dialed on on Friday night, right? I've absolutely seen that one happen. And the problem with those from a legal perspective is that the phone company AT&T pays that bill in real time. So they cover that cost. So some of that $30,000 isn't money that AT&T is charging you for the circuit. It's money that they paid out because it's a 1-900 number. And that AT&T is like, hey, that's your problem, not mine. Pay me. You sue the people in Nigeria. And that always ends up being a very tough conversation.
Yeah, that one was tricky. So before we wrap things up, you mentioned a nonprofit. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, sure. So my nonprofit success was the USS Cincinnati Commissioning Foundation. So I was based at Procter & Gamble. I was based in Cincinnati for many years. I was the president of the Naval Academy Alumni Association and on the Navy League board there. And so I took the lead in starting a not-for-profit to support the new U.S. Navy warship that was going to sail with the USS Cincinnati. So we wanted to support our ship and our sailors, and it was a ton of fun, and we did a great job, and we helped them have a great commissioning ceremony and had them out in March and opening day parade. That was all good. You mentioned not-for-profits and cyber earlier too, and in understanding not-for-profits are just another business as far as hackers are concerned in general, right? And so oftentimes not-for-profits have finance. Sometimes they have data and information. That's a lot of interest to hackers. I've even seen not-for-profits who are very well-intentioned organizations helping overseas in particular who become intelligence targets. Because interestingly, certainly some totalitarian regimes view those not-for-profits as actually as a threat, even though the people doing the not-for-profit are, hey, I'm just here to feed kids, right? I don't care about the politics of this. I want to bring in food. We want to do this, et cetera. But unfortunately, they at times don't realize that they can be seen that way as a threat anyway. And they become intelligence targets, and that can become actually damaging for the people that they help too. So if you're in the not-for-profit world, that it really is not any different from a cyber perspective than anybody else.
I would agree with that. And the nonprofits that I work with, I tell them the same thing. It's like your critical operations, don't use volunteers. Just don't. Because it is essentially functioning as a business. You have money flowing through. If you're dealing with like any, children with cancer or medical issues, you have lots of potentially medical information. You have to be HIPAA compliant. There's all sorts of things going on that they need to pay attention to. And some do a good job, and some, just have good intentions and don't think of those things. So no, I get completely what you're saying. Vince, how can we find you after the podcast? I am sure some of my listeners are going to want to reach out.
Absolutely. My website is www.cybersecgru.com, secgru, cybersecgru.com. And my email address is out there on the web, info@cybersecgru.com gets me. Please feel free to reach out. I love to help small business. I will spend an hour on the phone with anybody And if you just want to call me and say, pick my brain for an hour about cyber and your business and what you can do, and say, thanks, Vince, really appreciate your help, that's fine. Please feel free to reach out. I'm also believe in planting seeds. Maybe 5 years from now, you'll turn around and go, hey, that Vince guy really helped me. Maybe I call him back. Great. Of course, I am doing this as a commercial proposition, but I really do. The win for me is helping small and medium-sized businesses better protect themselves from bad people who do bad things. I have seen small businesses shut down through hacking. They lost a payroll and there's no recovering. They're just shutting the door. It breaks my heart. I hate to see that. So, the win for me is helping our businesses better protect themselves. And please feel free to reach out.
Sounds good. And we'll make sure that we put your website in our show notes also, so folks will have that information there. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
You're welcome. You have a great day.
Denise, great to talk to you today. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us for today's Nurture Small Business, Creating a Thriving Space podcast. Learn more about your host at DCAvirtual.com or by emailing her directly at denise@dcavirtual.com.